Now let's look at performance of an activity. So this is predominantly we'll be looking at the work of an auditor general. Now we have short videos on this, and so very important for you to listen to that short video. Now what you're saying here, the focus is on the public sector auditor, and this is the auditor general. Now the auditor general, the office of the auditor general is referred to as the Australian National Audit Office, or the ANAO. So this office supports the auditor general for Australia. It supports accountability and transparency through independent reporting to Parliament, the executive, and the public. So it's very interesting because here now, the person that the organization that the auditor general actually reports to is Parliament. Remember, when we were looking at the audit of historical financial information, the primary user was the member of, or the shareholder of the organization, as well as other users, but mainly it was to the members, to the shareholders of that organization. When it comes to public sector audits, the key organization that is reported to is Parliament. That report also goes to the executive, and it's also available to the public. So you and I can actually be able to see that report. Now you will find that these reports talk about improving public sector performance. So these audits will actually be looking at whether resources have been used economically, efficiently, and effectively in implementing government policy. So remember, there will be a government policy coming from the executive. And basically what will happen is these organizations will be required to implement this policy. And so that the Auditor General will be looking at how well the organization has implemented that policy. Now, one thing you should note is the Auditor General does not look at the government policy itself to see whether it's been structured correctly and the like. That is not the work of the Auditor General. The Auditor General basically assumes that government policy is correct, it's good. It's not the objective of the Auditor General to question the government policy. And so the Auditor General is only assessing how the public sector is complying or implementing the government policy. Now, this is the relationship, as you can see here. So there is a public sector auditor. Where is who is being provided an assurance? Parliament. Now, and you can see the interrelationship between all these sectors or all these parties. Now, Parliament is the one that provides funding and authority to government ministers, and these ministers provide that public policy or the policy direction and instructions. And then that is actually implemented by the public sector. Now, what will happen is the public sector auditor will perform an audit, and there will be that audit agency, so there will be financial performance or other. Now, the umbrella standard, as you recall, whenever it comes to assurance engagements other than the audit or reviews of historical financial information, is ISI 3000. So that is the umbrella standard. It covers all other engagements, assurance engagements, other than the audit and review of historical financial information. Now, we also have this organization, and basically this organization provides that platform for the collaboration of all these different auditor generals or public sector auditors to discuss and compare notes. But it has also come up with standards. But what is interesting is you will find that generally, especially in Australia, auditor generals tend to rely on ISI 3000 as well as ISI 3500. Now, this one is very specific to Australia. Anytime you see it starts with an A, that is an Australian standard. So you will find that the Auditor General relies a lot on that. So they generally don't rely a lot on standards coming from that entity. And mainly because, as you can imagine, the IASB is actually an international organization, and so there is that global reach to it. Now, the Auditor General is appointed by the Governor General, and public sector auditors are funded by Parliament. So that is where the fee comes from. And that is why it's easy to say or to conclude that the Auditor General is more independent than, say, audit firms that perform the audit of historical financial information. Why? Because the Auditor General is actually funded by Parliament, not by the entities that the Auditor General is actually auditing. Whereas when you look at the audit of historical financial information, the KPMG, the PwC, their fee actually comes from their clients. And so there is a view that sometimes the auditors are not quite independent. And you will see in the short videos that I have prepared around the audit of historical financial information, there have been quite a number of complaints by individuals, suppliers, customers, and sometimes by regulatory bodies that the auditors were compromised. And that's just because the fee is coming from those entities. Now, the Auditor General cannot be removed by this public sector auditor. The Auditor General can only be removed by the Auditor General. So you can see the Auditor General is really independent. They are not biased. They can perform an objective audit because they are independent.